Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel, where the truth doesn't ask for permission. Let's not waste time with intros or backstories. I was standing near the vending machine pretending to read the ingredients on a protein bar I didn't intend to buy. The hallway was quiet, too quiet for a floor that was usually buzzing after big meetings. That should have been my first sign. The second? The way the elevator doors opened and not a single person stepped out. I heard them before I saw them. Laughter, short, tight, unnatural. Like someone had told a joke that wasn't really funny, but everyone laughed anyway. And then came the sound I'll never forget. The sharp click of her heels against the marble floor. Precise, confident, like nothing could touch her. But when she turned the corner and saw me standing there, the man she swore she'd love through anything, something shattered behind her eyes. Her hand froze midair, still holding the company-issued folder. Her smile fell in pieces, and her co-workers, one by one, went silent. Dead silent. The man walking beside her, the one with the loosened tie and the hand that had just grazed the small of her back. He stopped too, looked at me, then at her, then took a step back. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just a meeting. It was something else entirely. And I had just walked into it without an invitation. The hallway still echoed with the last snap of her heels. No one moved. No one spoke. It was one of those moments that doesn't feel real until you realize you're the only one breathing. Her co-workers, who just seconds ago were laughing, had suddenly turned into statues, avoiding eye contact, shifting their weight like they'd rather be anywhere else but here. And her? Mireille just stood there holding that folder like it was the only thing anchoring her to the floor. I didn't say anything. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know what version of my voice would come out. I felt the tremor in my hand. I knew if I spoke, it would crack, and she would hear it. They all would. So instead, I looked straight at her and lifted the brown paper lunch bag slightly, as if it explained everything. Her eyes fell to it like it was a weapon. Like that bag, that dumb little gesture I'd put together an hour earlier, was the most damning evidence in the world. And maybe it was. Because that bag meant I hadn't stopped caring. That bag meant I hadn't given up. That bag meant I still believed in us. And now everyone standing there knew that I was the last to see what had clearly been going on for a while. She rushed forward. Not toward me, toward the conference room door. She mumbled something, but her voice was so low I couldn't make out the words. A short, nervous laugh bubbled from someone behind her, followed by an awkward throat clear. The man with the loose tie didn't move at all. He just stood there watching me with this unreadable expression, like he was waiting to see what kind of man I'd be. I hated that I didn't even know the answer to that myself. She finally reached me, her voice now louder but breathless. "Dalton, what are you doing here?" I looked at her. Really looked. Her hair was styled differently. Her perfume, stronger than usual. Her blouse, unbuttoned just slightly too low for what she usually wore to meetings. And beneath all of it, there was this tension in her jaw, like she was holding back something. Words, guilt, or maybe both. "I brought you lunch," I said quietly, holding it out. "Thought you might be hungry after your meeting." She took it, slowly. Her hand touched mine for a second longer than necessary. I couldn't tell if it was meant to be comforting or apologetic. Maybe she didn't know either. "I didn't know you were coming," she whispered. "I know," I replied. And that's when I heard it. A voice from inside the conference room, calling her name. Male. Calm. Familiar. Her eyes flicked in that direction. And then back to me. Was that him? I asked before I could stop myself. She didn't answer. The silence between us wasn't just awkward. It was thick. Heavy. Like a wall had grown between us right there in the hallway. One of her co-workers quickly squeezed past us, pretending to check their phone. Then another. One by one, they dispersed like shadows, leaving just her, me, and the echo of the question she wouldn't answer. And in that moment, I realized I hadn't walked into a misunderstanding. I'd walked into the middle of something that had already begun, and probably already ended, a long time ago. She was no longer mine. She just hadn't said it out loud yet. She didn't answer my question. Her silence told me more than words ever could. The way her lips parted like she was searching for a sentence that didn't exist, the way her grip tightened around the paper lunch bag like it might shield her from the truth unraveling in front of us. It was all too loud to ignore. I felt the air shift between us, no longer the soft tension of a couple who'd grown distant, but something colder, more final. The man in the tie finally stepped out from the doorway, and I hated how calmly he walked, like he had nothing to hide. He didn't glance at her. He looked straight at me, that neutral, unreadable face still plastered on. I expected arrogance, maybe even guilt. But no, what I saw was worse. Indifference. It was like I didn't even register to him as part of the equation. I was just an obstacle he politely stepped around. "Dalton, let's talk outside," Mireille said, her voice almost rehearsed. I followed her, not out of obedience, but because I couldn't stand in that hallway another second. My heart was slamming against my ribs, not from anger, but from humiliation, raw, thick humiliation that sat in my throat and refused to move. We stepped out onto the side terrace, the place where she once called me during lunch breaks to vent about meetings, the place she once told me she missed my voice. Now, it felt like neutral ground between two strangers. I leaned on the railing. She stayed standing. "You shouldn't have come," she said quietly. I laughed, dry and empty. "Yeah, I'm starting to figure that out." She looked away, the wind catching her hair just enough to make her look like someone in a movie. It made me sick, how beautiful she still looked while standing in the wreckage of everything we'd built. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out my phone, not because I wanted to record her or confront her with receipts, but because I had nothing else to do with my hands. "I saw how he touched you," I said finally. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't professional, and no one in that hallway looked surprised. She didn't deny it. "That would have been easier. I didn't plan for this," she whispered, her voice cracking for the first time. My stomach turned. "Didn't plan for what, Mireille?" She paused for so long, I thought she might lie. But she didn't. For it to get this far. My legs went numb. I sat down on the stone bench behind me, heart pounding so loud I thought she'd hear it. She had admitted it, in the vaguest, most cowardly way possible, but she had. And I hated how much I still hoped she'd say it didn't mean anything, that it was a mistake, that it was over. But she didn't. She stood there, biting her bottom lip, shaking her head like she was the one who had been wronged. That broke something in me. "I thought maybe you'd fight," she said suddenly, almost bitterly. "Yell. Ask why." "I don't have it in me," I replied. "I'm tired, Mireille. I've been tired for a long time. I just didn't know you were tired of me too." The tears in her eyes didn't move me. Not anymore. Maybe I would have begged a year ago. Maybe I would have blamed myself, told her I'd work less, love louder, fix whatever I broke. But right now, all I could think about was how I'd packed that risotto, how I'd placed the peach on top because I knew it was her favorite, and how none of it mattered anymore. She opened her mouth to speak, but I stood up. "Don't. Please. Just don't." And without another word, I walked away, not because I was strong, but because I couldn't bear to hear her justify it. The damage was done. She'd lit the match. I just didn't realize I was the one standing in the fire. That night, I didn't sleep. I laid on my side of the bed in the dark, fully dressed, shoes still on, with the sound of the hallway replaying in my head like a broken voicemail. Mireille's heels, the sudden hush, the man's voice calling her name. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face when she looked at me. Not surprised, not caught, just broken. And not for what she did. Broken because I had shown up. I didn't know if she would come home. A part of me thought she might just stay wherever he was. That maybe they had it planned. A hotel room somewhere. Maybe one she used before. She had business trips twice a month. I used to pack her little snacks for the road. Now, I wondered if I had been packing supplies for her affair. Around 2:20 a.m., I heard the key in the door. It was quiet, slow, like someone sneaking in. I stayed completely still. Her footsteps were cautious. The lights never came on. I heard the refrigerator door open, then close. Water running briefly, then nothing. She didn't come upstairs. I waited 10 minutes before I sat up and looked over the railing of the loft. She was curled up on the living room couch in her work clothes, knees tucked to her chest, facing the wall. Like she couldn't bear to sleep in our bed, or she knew she didn't belong there anymore. I wanted to say something. Ask her why. Ask her how long. Ask her if he meant something, or if I had simply faded into background noise. But I didn't. I lay back down, because I couldn't trust my voice not to break wide open if I said her name. At 5:41 a.m., my phone buzzed. A notification from my email. Then another. Calendar reminders from work, a message from my boss asking if I'd still be handling the morning data audit. I stared at the screen, then finally typed one sentence. "I need the day." Something came up. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. Eventually, I heard her stir downstairs, The soft creak of the leather couch, the clink of the glass she'd left on the coffee table. Still, no words. No movement toward me. No effort to explain. I finally walked down around 7 a.m., and there she was, still in the same position, as if sleep had never come for her either. Her eyes were open. She must have heard me coming, but she didn't turn her head. "You could have stayed with him," I said quietly, voice raw. "Would have saved us both this weird performance." Her eyes didn't move. I didn't know where else to go. That sentence burned more than I expected. Not I didn't want to be with him. Not I wanted to be with you. Just, she had nowhere else to go. I sat on the chair across from her, leaning forward, elbows on my knees, staring at the carpet like it had answers. I know it wasn't just last night. She didn't deny it. I looked up. "How long?" She finally blinked. "About 4 months. I clenched my fists, not in rage, but because my body had to do something to stop me from falling apart. For months. While I was packing her lunches, fixing the loose kitchen cabinet, booking a surprise weekend trip I thought might rekindle something. She was giving herself to someone else. Smiling that smile I hadn't seen in over a year. Whispering things I used to hear in the dark. Laughing in elevators while I was logging hours on spreadsheets. "Why him?" I asked. She hesitated. "He made me feel noticed." I laughed, bitter and hollow. "You want to feel noticed? I've been screaming inside this house for a year, Mireille." Her eyes watered, and for a second, I saw the woman I married. The girl who danced barefoot in our first apartment, who cried when we adopted our rescue dog, who once told me I was the safest place she'd ever known. But I wasn't safe anymore. I was just convenient. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she whispered again, but the words felt robotic, rehearsed. The kind people say when the damage is already irreversible. I stood up slowly. My voice was steady, but numb. "I'm going to the bank later. I think we both know what comes next." She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just nodded like she'd been waiting for that line. And with that, I walked upstairs and shut the door. End of part 4. How would you? Part 5. Her phone wasn't locked anymore. The next morning didn't feel real. The light was too soft, the air too still, and the smell of coffee, the same brand we always bought together, made me nauseous. I stood at the kitchen counter staring at the untouched pot. It brewed itself automatically at 6:15 a.m., like always, unaware that everything around it had changed. That's the thing no one tells you about betrayal. It's not the explosive confrontation that hurts the most. It's the mundane things that keep moving forward like nothing happened. Mireille was still asleep on the couch. I hadn't said a word to her since I walked upstairs and closed the bedroom door. I didn't slam it. I didn't even lock it. I just shut it, like I was closing off a version of myself I didn't know how to face anymore. But then I saw it. Her phone was on the armrest, screen facing up. No password prompt. Just open. Waiting. I hadn't looked through her phone once in 6 years of marriage. I used to think that was a sign of trust. Now I wondered if it was just denial. I stood there for at least 5 minutes. My hands were shaking, not from guilt, but from the knowledge that once I looked, I could never pretend again. Whatever I'd been holding on to, hope, confusion, some pathetic version of loyalty, it would all crumble. I tapped the screen. The messages weren't even hidden. No fake names. No coded language. Just Marcus, the man from the hallway, the man with the loosened tie and the expression like I didn't matter. Their chat history was full. Dozens of texts, photos, late-night exchanges, inside jokes, voice memos of her laughing, moaning, whispering things I hadn't heard in years. She called him M, and he called her L. Not babe, not baby, something more deliberate, personal. And then I saw the message that ended any doubt. M, do you think he suspects? L, no. He's sweet but oblivious. Sweet but oblivious. That sentence cut me deeper than the affair itself. It was how she saw me, how she talked about me while climbing into bed with another man. I sat down at the kitchen table, still holding the phone, scrolling through months of betrayal like it was a photo album. Dinners she skipped with me to work late. That one team retreat, weekend when I surprised her with flowers only to get her out-of-office reply. It all connected now. Every missed call, every distracted stare. And what made it worse, she didn't even bother to delete anything. Eventually, I put the phone back exactly where I found it. I didn't wake her. I didn't slam any doors. I went upstairs, packed a bag, and pulled out a set of old documents I never thought I'd need. The prenuptial agreement, The joint bank access info, the mortgage clause. I didn't want revenge. I wanted closure. I wanted space from this house that now smelled like betrayal and lavender detergent. I wrote her a note. Nothing dramatic. Just, I read everything. You're free now. I hope he was worth the cost. Then I left. I didn't check if she woke up. I didn't even look back at the house as I drove away. I went to a small motel 30 minutes outside town, the kind with bad wallpaper and quiet hallways. The silence wasn't comforting, but it was honest. It didn't pretend like everything was fine. That night, I stared at the ceiling and kept repeating the words in my head. Sweet but oblivious. It was sometime after midnight. I hadn't really planned on checking in for another night at the motel, but I couldn't bring myself to go home. Even calling it home felt wrong now. It was just a place. A place with walls soaked in her voice, floors that had been walked by someone she betrayed me with, and a bed that suddenly felt like someone else's idea of comfort. I sat in my car in the parking lot of the motel, engine off, windows cracked. The air was thick, humid, with a low buzz of crickets and the occasional squeal of tires on the highway beyond the trees. I hadn't eaten all day. My phone buzzed twice. One was my bank. The other, Mireille. I didn't open her message. I just stared at the notification banner as it slid across the screen like a dare. She'd written, "We need to talk. Please." No apology. No explanation. Just those 5 words, trying to pull me back into the same conversation I'd walked away from for a reason. But then something strange happened. I was still holding my phone when it rang, not from her number, but from a restricted one. Normally, I'd let that go straight to voicemail, but something made me press accept. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe spite. Maybe I was hoping it was someone calling to tell me this was all just some ridiculous misunderstanding. But the moment I picked up, I knew I wasn't meant to hear what came next. There was no hello, no greeting, just voices. 2 of them. Hers, unmistakably hers, and a man's. At first, I thought it was a voicemail glitch or a pocket dial. But then I heard the words. She said, "I told him everything. He knows now." Marcus. That smug voice I heard in the hallway. Cool and collected even now, like none of this touched him. "Everything?" he asked. There was a pause. "No," she said. "Not about the apartment." My heart dropped. My fingers went ice cold. "You think he'll find out?" he asked. "I don't know. Dalton's not stupid. He's just soft. He'll walk away before he digs too deep." I nearly threw the phone across the dashboard. But I couldn't. I needed to hear more. I needed to know how many layers of this web I was tangled in. Marcus laughed, soft, low. "So what's the plan now? You want me to move in?" Another pause. "I don't know," she said. "It's not that simple. There's still the account. The stocks. His name's on everything." So that was it. It wasn't just about attraction or boredom. It was about position, money, security, a future she had mapped out without me in it, but with my name still attached to the pieces she wanted. The call cut off abruptly, either a disconnect or maybe she realized she hadn't hung up. I stared at the black screen of my phone, then slowly placed it down on the seat beside me, like it was made of glass. There's a special kind of silence that comes after hearing someone you love describe you like a footnote. I wasn't even the villain in her story. I was just background, an obstacle to be managed. A soft man with his name on things she didn't want to earn herself. And the worst part? She was right. I had been soft. I had looked the other way when things didn't add up. I had excused the distance, the coldness, the last-minute cancellations. I had believed that love, if it was real enough, would course correct on its own. But I wasn't soft anymore. I was awake. And now that I knew about the apartment, whatever that was, and the account, the plan changed. She thought I'd just walk away. But now, I wasn't sure that was enough. The next morning, I drove back into the city. Not home. Not to her. I went straight to the address I found tucked inside one of our joint account statements, an address that hadn't been there 3 months ago. The payment listed apartment lease, auto draft. I'd passed it off as an error when I first saw it. Maybe she was covering something for a friend, I told myself. Mireille had always been generous, always had her hand in too many things. But now I knew. I parked 2 blocks away and walked. The building wasn't flashy, but it was clean. Mid-tier luxury, glass front doors, a code-locked lobby, a front desk assistant who barely looked up when I walked in. I gave her a friendly nod, walked past like I belonged there, and hit the elevator button. Floor 7. I didn't have a key, but the door I stopped in front of, Unit 713, had a doormat that said, "Hello there, handsome." I stared at it. It wasn't mine, but my name was paying for it. I knocked. I had no plan. I hadn't even fully accepted that this wasn't just paranoia feeding itself. But when the door opened, and I saw the man from the hallway standing there in sweatpants and no shirt, everything in me went cold. Marcus, smiling, like he expected me. He didn't say anything, just stepped aside. "She's not here." I didn't move. "You should have locked your door." He shrugged. Didn't think I needed to. I took a step inside. The place was staged like a condo showroom. Gray leather sofa, abstract wall art, cold and curated. No trace of who he was. But then I saw her scarf hanging on a kitchen chair. The same one I'd given her last winter. The same one she claimed she'd lost at work. "This place," I said slowly, eyes scanning everything. "It's under both our names. Did you know that?" He leaned against the wall, unfazed. "Nope. That your problem or hers?" The calmness in his voice, it wasn't confidence. It was boredom. He wasn't even concerned about being caught. He didn't see me as a threat. Not because I wasn't angry, but because I wasn't him. "You've been living here?" I asked. "Off and on." He glanced at the coffee maker, poured himself a cup without offering me one. "She needed space." Said you were suffocating her with routine. You ever think about that, Dalton? That maybe she changed and you didn't notice because you were too busy being stable? I should have hit him, but I didn't. Instead, I reached into my pocket and handed him a document. It was the lease, with my name clearly marked as co-signer and financial guarantor. Then I pulled out a second paper, the termination notice, signed by me, effective next month. "She's going to need a new place," I said, turning toward the door. "And you're going to need someone else to pay your rent." His smirk faded, just a little. "You think she won't just add me to something else?" I stopped, hand on the doorknob. "Let me tell you something, Marcus. You weren't her future. You were her distraction. And now she has to face everything she tried to bury under you." I walked out before he could respond. My legs were shaking, but I kept walking until I hit the street, then leaned against a stop sign just to keep my balance. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't hit him, but I had done something that mattered. I took something back, and I wasn't finished. Not yet. I didn't go back to the motel that night. I didn't go home either. Instead, I drove out to the edge of town, a place Mireille and I used to go before life became all work, emails, and cold dinners. There was this overlook that sat high above the river. At night, the whole city glowed like it was trying to convince you it never did anything wrong. I sat on the hood of my car, wind brushing over me like it was trying to scrub the past off my skin. For the first time in weeks, my chest didn't feel like it was full of nails. The ache was still there, sure, but it was different now. It wasn't the kind that begged for answers. It was the kind that came when you knew the answers wouldn't change anything. Mireille called me twice that evening. I didn't answer. Then she texted, "Can we meet?" I replied with one word, "Tomorrow." The next morning, I met her at a quiet park near our house. She looked smaller, not physically, but like the version of her that walked toward me had finally realized the gravity of what she'd broken. She sat on the bench beside me and didn't say a word for almost a full minute. When she finally spoke, her voice was brittle. "He's gone." I nodded. He was never really staying. She reached into her purse and handed me an envelope, her signed part of the divorce agreement. No fights, no requests, just acceptance. I opened it, checked the signatures, then folded it once and slid it into my jacket. We sat there a bit longer, and then I handed her the house key. "I'm keeping the dog," I said, "and the coffee maker." She smiled for the first time in days, a sad, quiet smile. "You always made the better coffee." We stood up. She hesitated like she wanted to say more. Maybe to explain. Maybe to ask something. But I just reached out and hugged her, one last time. Not for her. For me. To say goodbye not to the betrayal, but to the love that once was real. Then I turned and walked away. It's been 6 months now. I moved into a new apartment with big windows and no ghosts. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. I even adopted a second dog, and on weekends, we hiked trails that Mireille never wanted to walk with me. I still catch myself looking back sometimes, wondering what I missed, how I let things slip so far. But the difference now? I don't blame myself anymore. Sometimes people leave you slowly, and sometimes they just hide in plain sight until the day you finally look hard enough to see it. But healing isn't about understanding their reasons. It's about reclaiming your own. So here I am, still soft, still quiet, but no longer invisible. That was the end of the story, but maybe the beginning of something better. Have you ever made a hard choice that saved you in the long run? Share it in the comments. We want to hear your version of history. And don't forget to subscribe to Reddit Confessions, where every story reminds us that even in the darkest twists, there's always a way forward.